Welcome to the Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting. Today's date, Tuesday, July 26th. Welcome. We have a nice group in attendance here in Carnegie, and welcome to anybody that may be watching online or on CityLink television. We appreciate your interest in our government. We have a couple of committee reports today. They'll both be done by Councilor Rolfing. First is the Land Use Committee. We had a meeting last week. Councilor Rolfing.
Councilor Kiley was asking me important questions, so I apologize. Land use meeting. Yes, we had land use meeting last week. We discussed a number of different things here. First thing was the right-of-way ordinance that is coming, or may be coming before the committee. Shannon Verhey presented it. It's been updated, hasn't been updated since 1991, basically, and there's some need to do that, was a feeling. At that time, it basically said, and it still does, landscaping shall be limited to seed, sod, or other living ground cover approved by the city. Non-living ground cover, including but not limited to rock, stone, brick, concrete, asphalt, or other like materials, shall not be used as landscaping materials except as provided herein. And then he added, this exception shall not include the use of loose rock or asphalt as landscaping materials. So they went out and studied 4 different areas of Sioux Falls, got some input as to what the land cover was, what was happening in the parking. I call it the parking, the right-of-way. And he said potentially there could be thousands of violations within the city of Sioux Falls. He reviewed some possible ordinance changes and for the right-of-way. We felt that there wasn't quite enough study done of this, and that they should have more public input. Was a feeling of the committee, and so we asked him to go back. He and the committee to go back and get some additional information and make sure that we had at least 2 public input hearings on this, and so that's what they're going to do. And we'll be getting back to us when those are completed and they've had a chance to get some more input and look at some options that we have. Secondly, we looked at Prairie Meadows annexation situation. They had several meetings with the neighborhood and one-on-one meetings with some residents. However, there's only about 25% of the people who are have signed a petition to become voluntarily annexed. What was agreed on and suggested was that we form a steering committee and bring it back to the land use committee sometime later this year to look at some other options that we might have to set more precedents for the entire annexation situation, which makes some sense. We're gonna look at some other options again and see what we can do to form something that would maybe be more of a one size fits all, if you will, or something along those lines that would be more amenable to everyone. So that's where we had. The committee members are very willing or able to add anything if they wanted.
Any questions for Councilor Rolfing on Land Use Committee? Because I have a couple of things that I'd like to address regarding the right-of-way ordinance, and that's, like as you had indicated, that was passed by the then City Commission in '91, and it hasn't been significantly changed or altered since then. And in reality, about 1.5 years ago, we stopped enforcing that ordinance because it was unenforceable as it was written, and there were way too many people that were in violation of that ordinance at that time. And if we went back to enforcing that ordinance as it is, we'd have a lot of people that would be very upset. So 1.5 years ago, Public Works took to setting the groundwork to rewriting that ordinance. Very much in its preliminary stages. We don't anticipate seeing anything for several months. We plan on a working groups, basically, with public input and public involvement on how we can make this ordinance better. If it was brought to us the way it's probably proposed in its first stages, it'd probably go the way of the garbage can ordinance pretty quickly. It'd be my my feeling. And we'd be back to square one. So I have a feeling this is going to take.
It'll take longer than what we had originally anticipated, and I think you're exactly right. Key here is to get some additional and much more public input on how this can be worked, and for the reasons that it should be reworked.
And I don't think it's a great number of people. When I drive around the streets, I see most people probably do have grass. I see a lot of weeds and I see a lot of dirt, and it's probably because they gave up the battle of trying to keep grass growing in the boulevard. So and I can understand that in some circumstances. So we do need to have a better way of the people that take care of that city property in front of their homes, for them to keep it maybe within the standards that the community expects, but the process is going to be a lot longer than just 1 or 2 months, and I anticipate it dragging into early next year before we see anything, with a lot of public meetings, public input, and that type of thing. So, any other questions or input on that? Any other questions for Councilor Rolfing on land use? Urbanized development, Councilor.
I get to take up most of the meeting, it seems like here, right? Oh, it's just so far. Urbanized development met on July 17th at CCOG. We did a number of things. Some members of some boards that they handle were approved, CAC and TIP, Transportation Coordination Committee. The MPO does a self-certification that we send in, and Amber Gibson is taking care of that. We approved her report to do that. The Unified Planning Work Program was approved, and that's a final draft for 2015. Now, if anyone wants to see that, it is right here. I have it up here. And what that does is outlines all the street and highway type programs in the metropolitan area. And we do have it for 15, the ones that are going to be started on in 15, and then all the way through 17. So what they're looking at from there. So if anybody wants to look at that, we're happy to have that there, or have that available for them. Then there was a first draft of the TIP, Transportation Improvement Program, and that's going to be, the hearing's going to be on that at July, well, it was, I'm sorry. It was, no, I'm sorry, they're going to do that one on the 23rd. So we looked at some long-range transportation marketing research survey, reviewed the Transit Task Force report that was just completed by the city, and we looked at the 85th Street and I-29 project update and what it's going to take to get that going. That's going to be a very, very big project once they get started on it. You think of 85th Street running across Interstate 229 to make sure that we have another east-west corridor there. And then, of course, the T Road, just south of that, a mile, will be another one. So that's going to be quite an area right there, with 229 coming in to 29, 85th Street, and then the T Road, all within about 1.5 miles of each other. So it's going to take some designing work and a lot of good engineering to get that done. And that's about what we got done.
Questions of Councilor Rolfing on the Urbanized Development Commission? Very well, Councilor. Good notes, as always. City Council open discussion. Councilor Staggers.
Yes, just before the meeting, I passed out some questions dealing with the event center. So if you see these questions on your desk, that's where they came from. A constituent sent these questions to me, so that's just for your information.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Other open discussion. Councilor Jameson.
A couple items, if I could. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the, was it 2 weeks ago or last week? I can't remember, about the joint meeting, potential joint meeting with Minnehaha, Lincoln County, and City Council. I was able to talk to all the Minnehaha County Commissioners. They think it's a great idea. They're all on board. I talked to 2 Lincoln County Commissioners. They're on board. The rest will be here tonight, and hopefully we'll connect with them, but they've been difficult to reach. As well as I talked to Lynn Keller Forbes at Southeastern Council of Governments, and she's willing to participate as well. just a lot of great excitement about that issue. And so hopefully in the near future, you'll hear more about it and we'll start working towards a schedule and a plan of attack. So just an update on that. The other is Van Epps Park, if I could. I heard and saw recently that there was an approach to ban the alcohol in the park, and I support that completely. What's frustrating is apparently we need to wait for the park board to meet and make a recommendation. And I challenged the city attorney to show me the language and show me the facts, and he did, I guess. And but it seems frustrating that the elected officials here have a situation in our community that we can't deal with in the fashion and the timeline that we decide, because we've got another advisory board that needs to give an opinion. But that just seems frustrating to me. I think we should have a better approach to that, and maybe the due diligence and the deliberative process that we go through is well thought out in the charter, and that's why it's there. But for right now, it seems like an obstacle for us, and that seems unfortunate. As well, I wanted to follow up that this morning I had a meeting with the police department and became aware of some of the efforts that the police department were doing, and the mayor. And I want to commend them, especially the mayor, for his efforts in reaching out to that group and trying to work through that issue there. I think that's just part of the job, and he's doing a good job there. So I want to express that publicly. But as well, I learned a lot more talking to the police department about what's really happening and what they've been doing and what they're doing today to kind of work through that. So it's not as simple as it might look for us driving by and seeing a crowd of people and hoping that they would disperse. And I know you've probably heard some of the issues with the county and the issues they're dealing with, but I think the mayor is doing the right job, and hopefully we'll get it fixed soon.
If I could, Counselor, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but we could go take action without the Parks Board if it was a matter of health or a health issue. Is that correct, or am I overstepping my assumption there?
If I may, Counselor.
Please.
Again, there's state statute that establishes a park system where you have to have a park board, and it talks about how any regulations or any policies concerning parks has to go through the park board established by the city, and then city ordinance also requires specifically that it goes through the park board. So again, we're at the mercy of state statute in terms of it needs to go through the park. So.
Thank you. Okay. Other questions? Councilor Rolfe.
On that same issue then, I believe the park board meets monthly, correct? Is there any reason that we couldn't, by resolution, suggest or ask the park board to meet in special session if something needed to be done early like that? I mean, just an idea is all I'm suggesting here. If we needed something done more quickly, that could be done, I would believe. Ask them to consider it.
Thank you, Counselor. Again, I know the Parks Department and I think the Park Board had talked about convening a special meeting, which they could do so, but I wasn't involved in those specific discussions, but I know it wasn't workable. I can't tell you why in particular, but that idea was explored immediately. Okay. Let's call a special session to try and expedite the matter, and certainly your sentiments were well heard already, and again, for some reason, it just didn't work out.
Okay.
Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. Just a comment on the Van Epps, and I have been following this as well and understand it is an issue for our community, but it's much more than just saying, let's call this a dry park and the problem's going to be solved. I just want to challenge each of us to be thinking about the homelessness issue and substance abuse and all of those issues that are creating this at this particular park. It's not just the alcohol in hand is creating this, and if hey, it's a dry park, problem's going to be gone. That's not true. So we need to be careful with where we're going with it as well. I'm not saying that I think that we should not have it be a dry park, but we just need to also be challenging ourselves to thinking outside the box of how we can, the effects if it is a dry park. I have been contacted by a couple people in the neighborhood saying, if you make this the park dry now, they're just going to come and vandalize our neighborhoods. They're going to be dispersing and drinking on the street corners and doing this, doing that, which is obviously illegal. But again, just something that we all need to be thinking about and challenging ourselves with.
Councilor Erpenbach.
I'd just caution us to kind of bring the tone down just a little bit. We're acting a little bit out of fear here, and I would remind us that most, the largest percentage of our homeless population in Sioux Falls is working during the day, that they are families and children, and that they are either in jobs during the day, or they're sleeping because they work all night, or they're working to find help through the normal channels of the system. Very, very small percentage of our homeless population is on the streets in the daytime like that. So let's not label them to begin with, and then let's not act out of fear. Let's act from a position of concern for our fellow man, and let's also take into consideration all of those pieces that are coming together in this community. I commend the Catholic Diocese for being such a large player in helping to resolve some of these issues of those folks that are on the street during the day. And I hope that we'll continue to walk alongside them as a city. The other thing that I would say then is that Councilor Erickson is right, is that we can certainly declare this park, we can close it, we can take beer out of it, we can do whatever we want, but there will continue to be a group of folks who are going to live their lives this way, and we can't just continue to shove them down the road and hope they go away. And so I would hope that we continue to consider them our fellow man, and that we treat them in that way, and that we go forward, and not from a position of fear, but from a position of wisdom and concern.
Other public input? Open discussion, I guess. I have a couple of things. First of all, we have no committee meeting right after this meeting. We will have a 7 o'clock joint meeting with the Lincoln County Commission. And then next week, it is our 5th Tuesday of the month, so we have no meeting scheduled, informational or otherwise, for next Tuesday. August 5th, we're going to get back into it. We have budget hearings. Correct me if I'm wrong, starting at 3 o'clock on August 5th on that Tuesday. So do your homework and get ready for our budget hearings. So other comments or questions? All righty. Our first presentation today is our bi-monthly event center project update, and Mark Cotter is leading the show.
All right, thank you, Council Chair and Council members. We always look forward to giving you your update, to give you an update on your new event center. As the title of the slide says, we are in the home stretch. Today is the 620th day of construction, and tomorrow will mark the 2-year time frame of when we started construction. So it's been a very good process, been a very methodical process, been a very good design team as we are in the home stretch. The construction manager at risk contractually is August 1st to turn over the building. So temporary occupancy permit, that means all life safety is in place, and also substantial completion is met. And so the project remains on time, on budget, and that's just a good point as you go in. Once we get substantial completion and occupancy permit, then when you go into the building, you don't have to wear all your PPE gear. So that's always something that we're looking forward to. One of the reasons we hired Mortensen when we went into this process was we want to open the building with 0 punch lists, and that starts with a very methodical process several weeks ago, a very organized process to go room by room and have all the respective trades address those items. And I think you'll agree, when you go into the building, the finish level, the fans are going to enjoy it, the promoters are going to enjoy it, and so a lot's happening. A lot of landscape site work is happening also on the site when you drive out there. All right, here's a couple of images just to get you acquainted with what's happened really in the last 60 days. Sponsorship signs are going up all over the building. Banner flags on the walls and those directional signs at the vomitories. Final signage is being installed in a number of areas, and here's the Quartzsite Club that's on the south side of the building. again, one of the things that we employed when we started this is that we wanted to have 3 different stones from the region. So this happens to be the area on the west end of the building. This is the Slate Club to represent the west side of the state. There's a lot of quartzite in the building, and then we also have one of the clubs has the Kasota stone. And so this is the club that's on the west end. It's been named the Comfort Zone, and really a fun environment in there with that oval shape. Concessions are going in. This is a lot of equipment coming in from the FF&E and getting ready to meet the fans. A lot of back-of-house work as well. One of the things that our architects encouraged us to do when we build the facility is don't only focus on the fans, also make sure that the building is very functional from a promoter standpoint. All the dock levelers with the 4 docks and the drive-in dock, and really that back-of-house where the athletes, the stars, and all that building engineering will happen to heat and cool the facility is really all getting finished out and getting cleaned out. A lot of site work. If you've seen those ponds that are located along Western Avenue, they are to capture and then slowly release the stormwater from all the new parking that's been created. And also to make it reflective of what's inside the building, there's a lot of quartzite stone that's been placed around, and landscape gardens, the local landscaper is doing all that landscape work in and around these ponds. In the lower right, you see a lot of sidewalk going in. The other thing that we want you to look at when you go out there is just all the areas that have been focused on getting the fans into the building, and the planters to soften some of those areas. And so as you drive by, you can now, between here and really September 1st, you'll see extensive amount of landscaping going in and irrigation. All right, here's the tie-in to the Sioux Falls Convention Center into the main lobby. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that really the flooring on the convention center is timeless. It's a terrazzo floor was picked, was installed. It's lasted for the life of the building. It still has a long life. We took that same approach, picked that black color, and the entire main lobby is also terrazzo, and so it has an amazing effect when you go out there, and a really nice transition between the convention center and the main lobby when there's large enough events that link the two together. I encourage you, when you get a chance, to take a look at it. The Gersini brothers have done a really nice job with a significant impact in that main lobby. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment. 70% of them have been bought out. A significant amount of furniture will start to come in on August 4th. Brown & Sanger and Interstate's office has those 2 contracts. Brown & Sanger has the lion's share of it, and they have a very organized process to start having semi-truck loads come in, and about 10 to 12 upfitters will start to assemble and place all that furniture throughout the building. A lot of sports equipment, box office equipment, housekeeping, laundry, material handling. When you start to look at all the elements that it takes to run one of these buildings, SMG has been heavily involved in helping us with the list of FF&E items that's really starting to come together, and really that focus happens in August. LEED certified, there was a discussion last time about what did LEED certified ultimately cost, and there's a number of steps that you do to get third-party advice, third-party commissioning. One of the things that's key that we've learned is that once you have these systems and then you commission them, whether it's the HVAC system to heat and cool the building, if you bring in a third party to really help you balance and commission those facilities, you just know that you're going to run those at a much higher level of efficiency. So that's just one example that goes into your points for LEED. And then our estimate of savings each year to take these extra steps will be about $100,000 in energy per year. All right, update, what's to come. Substantial completion, again, is on track for August 1st, and so that's just around the corner. a significant amount of commissioning is happening. And so what that means is that the subcontractors are training SMG on how to run the lights, the HVAC system, a very organized schedule on all the different aspects on how the training occurs and when it occurs. We're going to focus heavily in August on completing the site work, and so irrigation, sod, trees, plant materials, all those will start to come together, and then finalizing punch list items. There's been certainly discussion on the metal panels, and so we want to give you an update today. I will invite Dave Fifley, the city attorney, up. I just want to reiterate that they are not a structural element of the building. As we continue to work through the metal panel issue, we're going to take a very methodical approach, as we've done with every other element of this building, to make sure that we have a very sound approach when we're done. The metal panel issue will not affect the grand opening of the building, and I'll have David Fifley take you through the resolution process that we're into right now. David?
Good afternoon. Dave Fifley with the City Attorney's Office. As the slide indicates, the project team is certainly engaged in being proactive with the metal siding issue. There was a meeting with the project team, including Mortensen, Sink Combs, Coke Hazard, along with the manufacturer of the panels, that being Imetco, and also Dawson, who is the local installer of the panels, on May 7th of this year. The problems were noted at that point, and certainly the entire team is aware of the issues involving the panels. In legal terms, they were put on notice that this is called non-conforming work, and that means that we have contract documents that specify exactly what is to be installed there and how the final result will be, and they've been put on notice that they have non-conforming work. On May 27th, we had the bi-monthly informational in front of you folks, and Councilor Rolfing certainly brought up the issue at that point. And again, to reiterate, the team was already aware of the issue, but we thank you, Councilor Rolfing, for bringing that again to the public eye. And certainly it is something that is being addressed in earnest. Many discussions have been had since those May meetings, and more will continue. But by notifying the team that we have non-conforming work, you triggered a lot of contract provisions. And in particular, legally pursuant to the contracts that you folks approved, we have to go through first an informal resolution process. And what this means is you allow the parties involved an opportunity to identify what the causes of a problem are, possible solutions are to that problem, and most importantly, allow them time to remediate that work. As a private practice attorney, I represented about 3 or 4 different construction companies around town. I did a number of design-build contracts. Frankly, 5-6 years ago, the construction manager at risk was a pretty new creature yet under the law, so I was used to the design-build. But certainly the main structure of the design-build contracts is carried forward to these contracts where legally, contractually, you need to provide them that opportunity first to identify what the problem is, allow time for a solution to be identified, and then allow them time to correct the problem. And you have to do all those steps before you can take any additional steps as the owner of the building, being the City of Sioux Falls. In doing that, the city has also undertaken their own due diligence regarding what the possible issues are and what the possible solutions are to this problem. We hired an independent third party to investigate the issue. He's a forensic architect, and he came recommended and had a stellar reputation, and that came from those outside of affiliated with any of the parties involved. I can assure you in my private practice days, it's very difficult to find a forensic expert. And when you get one with good recommendation, you jump at the opportunity. We have had this individual, the Judd Allen Group is their name. They're out of the Twin Cities. They do have a lot of experience, and in particular have had experience with panels in particular. They've given us their initial impressions, but they have not issued any type of final report. At this point, again, we're doing our due diligence as the other parties come in and identify what maybe the causes are, what possible solutions are. We as a city and as stewards of the public dollars and stewards of a public building all need to keep in mind that we need to have our own expert telling us independently what we need to do, what should be done. In that vein, we are hoping for an informal resolution of the problem. Obviously, that's why these contracts are always written in that way. We want to try and resolve the problem. We want the parties who had their work that's non-conforming, give them that opportunity to fix the problem so we can resolve it informally. In exploring possible solutions, we are having 2 new mock-ups of the panels being done. The materials are already ordered, and they should be received and then completed by mid-October. At that point, we'll have an idea of exactly what a good solution is. Again, you're putting a theory into practice and placing it out in the field there to make sure that this is a workable solution. We need that process to unfold. Now, I understand there's some obviously recent media attention garnered with this topic, but again, an informal resolution process is not going to be one that's formal, that takes place at Carnegie Hall in front of you, where everyone's standing in front of you and saying, I messed up, or I did this, or I did that, and I'm willing to do this. Those types of discussions are informal. There's no intent to try and hide the ball with the public. We're being very careful public stewards, and we're keeping the council apprised of exactly what's going on, and as we have new developments, we're more than happy to keep the council apprised. However, we do need this process to unfold. I'm a certified mediator, and I've been involved in, I don't know, hundreds of cases that have been successfully resolved, mostly representing other parties. My prior law firm, the senior partner, his specialty is being one of the best mediators in the state, and I've seen mediation and the informal resolution process work its way rather well. However, it does take time. And again, it's informal, where it's not going to be taking place here at Carnegie Hall. And we would just hope that the public would allow that process to unfold. Contractually, we must have that process unfold before we take any additional steps or pursue any other remedies. So hopefully that process will reach a successful culmination with a resolution. And again, this is the exterior skin. It will not affect the opening date of the event center. I will now allow Mike Cooper to address the inspections issue.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Cooper with Planning and Building Services. Wanted to give a little update as far as our inspection process with a major project like this. You can imagine the concern and the attention that we want to pay towards our life safety code requirements. Our building services team have completed over 450 different inspections on site. Those include our building inspectors from the beginning of the project with the footing and foundation to the structure itself, electrical inspections, the HVAC system, as well as plumbing. And that represents over 42 working days of time to ensure compliance with our life safety codes. In addition to the on-site inspections, we have also been involved with plan review of all the different plan documents, as well as other meetings with different design consultants. So we take this very seriously. It does involve a lot of time. I know the on-site folks are very familiar with our inspectors. We've been able to resolve issues as they've come up. But the reports that I've been getting back is that things are working out well, and we're going to turn over to the public a very safe and secure building once we open up. Also want to mention that in addition to the building services team, there's another important part of this in terms of the fire safety. And so our fire prevention folks also spend a lot of time on site looking at the fire suppression system. And that includes everything from the sprinkler system as well as working with SMG and others, when there's going to be an event in the building, whether it's a concert or a sporting event that's going to use pyrotechnics, there's an actual standard procedure that we're going to be using to ensure that we have a safe event that goes on. And so there's going to be, again, an operations plan that we'll have in place for those kind of events that will involve pyrotechnics. And then finally, our health department, we have our points of sale in the building. And just like any restaurant around the city, we have our health inspectors that go out and ensure, again, the public safety is going to be there. Whether it's the sink or the type of food preparation that goes on, our event center will be no different. And we're going to be having some very good, healthy points of sale within our building. And again, our health department will be watching over that and ensuring that that's going to be the case. So again, a lot of effort and attention goes into this so that opening day we'll have all these issues in place, and they'll again feel very comfortable that we're turning a safe facility over to the public. Up next is going to be Darren Smith.
Good afternoon, Darren Smith, Director of Community Development. Well, we've been giving these updates for a long time now, and I think you folks know I always start with this slide because it really does capture the 5 major categories in the private revenue generation effort that we've been undertaking for some time. So again, going right on down the list here, naming rights agreement, which will be almost exactly 2 years ago. In August, this coming August will be 2 years since we've announced that agreement, which is kind of hard to believe. Luxury suites sold out in 3 business days. Loge boxes sold out in 29 minutes. Club seats sold out fairly quickly as well. And the sponsorship sales effort has been very strong, continues today, and it will continue going forward. So what are the results of all of those efforts? Well, you see them here. Very brief summary. Nearly $38 million in total private revenue generated. So that's the total of all of the agreements we have over the life of those agreements going forward. And again, there will be more to come. $3 million in annual gross private revenue generated. So that is how we measure the amount of gross revenue coming in that first full year of the event center, and that'll be the 2015 calendar year. Now this number will change a little bit going forward as future annual escalators kick in with some of the agreements. It'll go up, but then some of the short-term agreements, those 3, 4, 5-year deals go away. Hopefully they'll be renewed or replaced, but it'll be a bit of a moving target after that. But generally speaking, $3 million is the number we'll have the first full year, and it should go up from there. All of the agreements we have, well, how many agreements do we have in all these categories? It's almost 250 separate agreements for all the different things, premium seating, sponsorships, naming rights, and so forth. So it's been quite an effort. The last slide I have here shows the sponsor organizations or the sponsors. I do this not only to give them one more plug and thank them for their support, but the reason I really wanted to make sure that we had a chance to show this up on the screen here in what I think is our last project update is to demonstrate how many are local. I mean, it's, as far as I'm concerned, when you look at this list, it's a who's who of local businesses. And this does not capture all of them. We have at least 5 deals that have been signed. We just haven't had a chance to announce them yet. Working with them, these new sponsor partners, to do it in a way that they'd like to see it done. That will happen very soon. There's, I think, about 4 to 6 more deals that we're pretty close to having done, and they'll be announced going forward as well. We can go right on down the list of title sponsors. First Premier Bank Card, Sanford Health, Gas Stop Convenience Stores, Kelloland, Mid-Continent, Avera McKinnon, Graham Tire, Johnson Heidebrim, Abdallah Law Firm, Lewis Drug, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's been an impressive effort, I think, and not only by the folks representing our side, but equally or more impressive by the private sector and our local business community stepping up in the way that they have. 2 final notes I wanted to mention is our agreement with Legend Sales and Marketing. will be coming to a formal end on July 31, which is just around the corner. So I do want to publicly thank them for their effort. They've just been fantastic. As you can see from the numbers, they speak for themselves. It's been a very, very successful effort. And Ryan Query with Legends and is here today, and John Alper and Ben Wrigley and the whole team at Legends. So Ryan, thank you for your efforts. And I also wanted to note that that agreement is coming to an end 4 months earlier than anticipated when we signed the agreement again almost 2 years ago. So that's approximately a $60,000 savings for the city that would not have been possible without Legends mutually agreeing to end early. And the reason we're ending early is because we've exceeded the expectations we have at this point and the timeline that we thought any of this could be possible. So again, great effort on their part and everyone involved. Next, I believe, is Tracy Turback.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Darren. We all know that Darren's a pretty modest guy, and he goes through this recap on the private dollars that are being generated in sort of a matter-of-fact fashion. And he's been doing that, as he mentioned, for many months now, recapping the milestones that we've reached with the naming rights and the premium seating and the sponsorship revenues, to the point where some may get the sense that this was kind of inevitable or kind of a given from the start. Well, I can assure you that it was not inevitable. It took a lot of hard work, and it's the result of many, many very good decisions that were made along the way. I think the effort to generate private dollars for this facility is one of many success stories associated with this project. And I want to congratulate Darren and the team that he led for the success that they've had in reaching those achievements in terms of the private funding for the facility. I think it was about 3 years ago we laid out the plan as to how private dollars were going to be used for the project, that they weren't going to go into building the project, but were committed to the ongoing support of the operating budget. And some folks, I think, at that time thought we were maybe a little bit off our rocker when we proposed that. But that commitment to use these dollars, or that revenue stream to fund operations, is really absolutely critical to meeting the goal of operating the facility in the black as we move forward. The community's investment in this facility clearly is a very long-term investment. There will be, over the life of the facility, many ups and downs, I'm sure. But because of the success that Darren and his team have achieved, I am more confident than ever that the facility will meet that goal of operating in the black. As we prepare over the next couple months to get across the goal line with this project and open this beautiful new asset to the community. So even though Darren's modest, I thought it was appropriate to toot his horn a little bit today in recognizing those achievements. In terms of an operations update, it was a little over a month ago, mid-June, when the first major event, Jason Aldean and the Florida-Georgia Line, were announced to be the first major event on October 3rd. And it's got country music fans locally here and around the state, I think, very, very excited. Now, I'm not a huge country music fan, but I've since learned that Jason Aldean is one of the biggest country shows, maybe the biggest in the nation. And to pair him up with Florida-Georgia Line, who are selling out shows around the country in their own right, is really a major coup, I think, for an opening event. It certainly is a pair of acts that would never have come to Sioux Falls without the new event center. It's not something that we could have attracted into the old arena or even managed to host in the old arena. As you know, the event quickly sold out. In fact, we've had 3 shows that have been announced and sold out, 3 major shows. As you know, Cher will be performing in October, and Eric Church in December, and both of those major touring acts sold out in relatively short order. So ticket sales have gone very well for the big acts. SMG is also has announced and has on sale tickets for 2 other shows, a Disney show. Ticket sales are going very well for that show. And last week, a Demi Lovato concert scheduled for October went on sale, and ticket sales have gone very well for that show as well. So I think we're seeing the kind of variety of entertainment that this new facility will bring to Sioux Falls, and I think a lot of folks are excited about that. The one important thing I think that I've learned from SMG is that with this early success, they've really been able to leverage that and use that to market our facility and demonstrate to promoters and acts around the country just how hungry we are here in Sioux Falls for top talent and entertainment. So they're leveraging that success to entice other events here into our new event center, and we'll see more announcements along that line in the months to come. SMG, along with everybody else involved in the project, they're very, very busy making final preparations to make that transition from construction to operations. Training their staff, learning the building systems is a major focus as we go through that transition process. They're receiving a significant amount of support from their corporate offices in oversight and ensuring that that transition is a smooth one. They do continue to staff up. SMG hosted a jobs fair last month, or actually earlier this month, and I know they plan on participating in a couple of additional job fairs in the weeks to come. They're anticipating hiring approximately 100 new part-time employees. And in addition to their local staff, their expectations are to bring in somewhere between 15 and 20 individuals from other SMG managed facilities with different expertise in different areas to help manage through those first few big events. So any kinks that are there, they'll have ample support to work through those issues and manage through those initial events. Ovations, our food and beverage contractor, will provide similar support from their other facilities for the food and beverage operations. As we know, that's a key element to patron satisfaction and the fan experience is that food and beverage service. Another area of focus for SMG is planning a range of soft opening activities leading up to that October 3rd Jason Aldean Florida Georgia Line concert. They're anticipating releasing a schedule of activities and events sometime in August. Those activities will be geared around promoting the facility and getting the systems and the building tuned up, so to speak, and for those first big events. It also provides an opportunity to train their staff, kind of test drive people, see where things are working, where they're not, and really help them prepare for the first big event. Those soft opening activities will begin around mid-September. They'll be spread out over a couple of weeks, and included in that will be a significant event for public open house so that the folks of Sioux Falls can see firsthand their new event center, experience some of the fun things that will happen there. In terms of the financial summary, this is the same report we've been providing to you, each update. You can see that through the end of June, we've spent about $96.4 million on this project. That's $8.4 million just over the last 2 months. We're at about 82% of the project budget now expended, and that leaves about $20.6 million remaining in the project budget. The project continues to proceed on schedule, as Mark talked about, and within budget. And I know it's been mentioned before, but it I think bears repeating. In any significant construction project, particularly on one of this scope and magnitude, we know that there will be some post-opening costs that will be incurred. And as Mark relayed an update or two ago, $500,000 has been set aside in the project budget to cover those unidentified costs. So even after the building is open, we'll have funds available to address any needs that do come up. This is our last scheduled update on the project prior to the opening of the Event Center. And I do want to take this opportunity as well to congratulate the rest of the project team on the great success the project has had over the last 3 years. I know Darren mentioned it's 2 years ago that the naming rights agreement was announced, but it's really been over 3 years that the team has been working on this project. I've been around many successful projects over my 30 years in this business, but this has truly been the best managed, most effectively executed project that I've ever had the privilege of being associated with. And I think, I mentioned Darren earlier and his contributions, or some of the contributions that he and his team have made to the project, but Mike Cooper and Mark Cotter, and of course Kendra Simmons, all have done just an absolutely outstanding job of leading us all throughout this effort, and I congratulate them for that. Now we just need to get across the goal line here. We've got a couple months to go, and we'll have that new event center that you folks as city council members and the entire community can be incredibly proud of for decades to come. So with that, we will open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Turbach. We'll go into questions. Councilor Staggers.
Yes, I guess today for the first time I learned that May 7th the city was involved in this issue of the siding. And then on May 27th, we had Councilor Roffing bringing it up for the first time for the city council. And then after that, we haven't heard anything about the siding issue. And this is a critically important issue, obviously. And we had a report from our consultant in Minneapolis before July 1st. We were not notified on the city council about it. People have asked me if I've seen the report. No, nothing at all. And now August the 1st, we've learned that we're going to be getting the building. It's going to be turned over to us. And we still have this issue of the siding. I guess my first question is, when is the city council going to see this report?
Councilor Staggers, I would say there is no report at this point. We have an expert that is consulting with us, and he has only rendered initial impressions. In terms of a final report or any type of report, there is none in existence, and there's none to turn over.
When are we going to learn about his impressions?
Again, Councilor, those are merely impressions, very preliminary. We're in an investigatory stage at this point. And we've offered several times in terms of keeping the council apprised as those opinions become finalized. We're certainly willing to do that, but again, it's at a very preliminary stage at this point.
Because before July 1st, Judge Peterson said that a report was in the hands of the city. Now, it might be preliminary. If it's preliminary, when is the city council going to find out what's in the preliminary report?
Again, Councilor, to the extent that you would like some type of, again, as we've laid out the process, we're talking about a resolution process where it could eventually go to litigation if the parties are not able to resolve it. And if you would want to do that type of an executive session, I'd be more than willing to arrange that. And we've kept council leadership apprised. And as we have a more definitive final opinion, we will certainly have those types of attorney-client communications with all of you.
But apparently a lot of stuff has happened already. And the city council, we don't know what's going on. We haven't had any executive session dealing with this at all.
Again, Councilor, I've had several conversations with council leadership. That is how our communication process goes. We're working through a process. It would be like telling you how the race is going at 10 yards when we have 90 yards to go in a 100-yard dash. At this point, we want to have something a little more definitive from this expert, so we're able to map out exactly what needs to be done and have you policymakers apprised of where we need to go. But at this point, it's so preliminary It's simply impressions.
We're coming up to August 1st when we're going to be given the building, and this hasn't been resolved yet?
Well, again, through the informal resolution process can take several months, Counselor. We're at the initial stages of that. We've given them notice that it's non-conforming work. We're not accepting the work. They're turning over possession of the building. That's a different story than accepting the work. So we're following the contract provisions in terms of notifying them it's non-conforming work. We go through the process, allow them an opportunity to do these mock-ups, allow them a chance to show what the solutions will be, allow them a chance to remedy their own work. That's all part of this process.
Can we,
Counselor
if I can
James,
ask just one more question,
one more
real
question,
fast,
Counselor.
real fast. That is, are we going to get any assurance here on the City Council that we're not going to pay more money to get this resolved? Is there any assurance?
It's so premature, Counselor. I can't, we're 10 yards into a 100-yard race. I can't tell you that we're not going to spend a dime. I don't know at this point. I can't tell you that.
So we don't have a strategy of not
Until
wanting
we
to pay
know
more?
and finalize exactly the possible solutions, have the mock-ups ready, identify what the possible solution is, have the parties given a chance to remedy the situation. If that doesn't come to fruition, at that point, we'll talk about it.
Counselor Jameson.
Dave, isn't it exciting being a part of this event center discussion? You get to come and get hammered on. After
I
hearing,
stopped counting after 1,000, Counselor Jameson, of how many litigations I've been in a part of. But again, it's so rare that it comes out this much in the public eye. And again, the City of Sioux Falls is a very unique client. I mean, I've had counties and cities across the state that I've represented on all types of issues, including construction issues. In fact, my last trial was a construction issue and regarding another city. It's just so unique, exactly, because we're Sioux Falls. We're under the media spotlight, and again, there's a process to go through. Anyone else would have the luxury of this informal process taking place without a lot of attention, frankly, and it's something that has to be done. It's the process that we go through. Again, sorry, I'll let you ask your question. I apologize.
I see all that pent-up energy. That's good.
I enjoy what I do, and I'm emphatic about it.
I guess what I wanted to share was the explanation is good. It helps me understand it better now. It makes a lot of sense, actually, that there's provisions in the contract to work out situations just like this, because there's probably happens that if you've ever built a home and other things, there's lots of ways that I think what's struggling or what challenges me a little bit is that there has been a lot of interest from the public about the siting, and they quiz us about it.
Certainly.
And we're sitting here without maybe not as much knowledge as we wish we had, and maybe that's something we need to work on. But another point, if I could, and as long as you're up here, and the other challenge I'm having is that on, what was it, May 27th, when Rex brought it up, that there was an issue that he had finally brought up in public discussion about the siting. You know, 2 months prior to that, I had asked the architect when he was here if there was any surprises that he had, and he didn't mention any. I kind of had heard about the siting then, but I gave him a softball throw. If he wanted to bring it up, great. If not, maybe it's something I didn't think was good, but others thought was fine, or the siding was designed that way. Either way, the problem for me is that I'm not sure that, in all fairness, that we've been given everything that you're aware of that you're dealing with in any other non-conforming work. We had to ask it, and it was only because we asked the question specifically that we got an answer. I'm not sure that it's been perceived as well that maybe you've updated council leadership and that hasn't trickled down, but are there, I'm asking the question,
Sure.
Are there any other non-conforming work issues with the event center?
Again, Counselor, that's what the whole purpose of the punch list is. I'm not aware of any of those specific details of anything. I mean, the one issue I've been involved with is certainly the siding issue. And again, I'll let Mark Cotter address that further.
Thanks, David. Well, we do have good attorneys on our team. You know, Councilor Jameson, whether it's a road project, if we're building a library, we're working through construction issues on a daily basis, and we address these non-conforming things. I think the key is, that David had mentioned, is just the contracts that we went into with Sincombs and Mortensen provides for this process in dispute resolution, and it's our roadmap on how we'll see it through. When it's a roadway project, if we have non-conforming work, we have general conditions that path us through this, and so I think it's a little bit odd. It's probably a little bit odd for us to be telling you these kind of things, because we're dealing with them on a daily basis, whether it's an intersection project or the event center. I know they're two very different projects, probably too different from the public eye, but ultimately we're dealing with non-conforming work and resolving things on a daily basis, so for what it's worth.
Okay, so for the exact question is, are there any other non-conforming work issues with the event center at this time?
We've not issued a non-conforming item outside of this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Have we, throughout the entire process, identified we'll get started and say we don't like how that is going, and then, you know, that's even the next level of informal. I mean, thousands of decisions have been made inside this building, and our architects and Mortensen, the subcontractors, are right there. But the first truly legal item that we've put the contractor on notice that correct the non-conforming work has been the siding.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Erpenbach.
I'm ready to switch gears if the rest of the council is. I'm ready to watch that contract just kind of go through its motions like we voted to do as a council. So thank you all. My question is for Darren. When the Legends contract, I'm interested, one, that Legends has backed out, or not backed out, but given us more than we expected in a shorter amount of time, and didn't say, oh yeah, but we still want to work out that $60,000. I'm amazed that we saved that amount. Yep. But now tell us the next step with that particular process. Who's selling those things now, and how does that go forward from here?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a very good question, and one that maybe I thought was a little inside baseball or whatever, but it's a very good question. We are actually in the process much of this month, since we mutually agreed that the work of Legends has really come to an end for all intents and purposes and needs to be wrapping up this month. We've started the process of transitioning everything to SMG. So as the building facilitator and manager, SMG combined with Ovations, but primarily SMG, they will manage all of those agreements, those 200 and some agreements, their relationships really. They will, we need to make sure they know everything they need to know about what went into those agreements, the expectations, creating or establishing those relationships. And in many cases, frankly, that's been going on. SMG has been involved throughout, but maybe a little less active than they're going to be now going forward. So that's being done right now as we speak, and it's going very, very smoothly. And SMG will take on those relationships now and manage them. And our hope, of course, is that we have 100% retention with all of those sponsorships and suites and loge boxes and so forth, that those folks are so pleased and so happy that they renew those agreements when they're due.
So essentially, I mean, I could imagine this becoming an entire department of the city if we allowed that to happen. But I imagine that you now, as Legends is backing away, so are you. You're more of a consulting role, and eventually SMG is that department as our contracted employees to run this building.
Yes,
correct?
And thank goodness no one has made that suggestion that we create a department to do this. As Tracy indicated, so many different people on staff have led these different pieces that in many cases the city hasn't undertaken before any of us individually, and so you lead these efforts and do the best you can, and everybody's just done a fantastic job. And then on top of it, I think even more importantly, you go find the people who do specialize in these things, like Legend Sales and Marketing and others. And that's what we've done, and I think overall as a team we've done a really good job of doing that. But that's exactly right. SMG will now pick up these agreements and move forward and do a great job with them.
And if I might, Mr. Chair, just pass along one comment. I have a coworker who is a Stampede season ticket holder, and so I've been getting daily updates as to when they were going to get to pick their seats. And he's among a fan base that's passionate about their team, and I just wanted to share that excitement that my colleagues are hearing complaints about siding, but I think folks mostly understand it's a contract thing. You'll figure it out. It's no different than, as Councilor Jameson said, it's like building a house. The fans are excited.
Yeah, they're excited.
The fans are thrilled by what they saw because they now have been in the building and seen those seats, and they see the sight lines. And this gentleman that speaks with me every day says, there is not a bad seat in that house. You just tell them that. There is not a bad seat in that house. I just appreciate the work you've done. It's exciting. I can't believe it's been 2 years already and we're rocking it. So,
yeah, that's right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rolfing.
Yes, I have one question, and thank you for asking one of my questions, Councilor Erpenbach. That was great. On the LEED certification that was started, I don't know who you talk about that, Mark. What level of certification is that, and is that truly our final cost, that $48,000? Because I heard many figures that were much higher than that.
That is our final cost, and that includes the plaque. And so we're going for certified. It's difficult to get these buildings above that based on how they're built, how the outside envelope is designed. But we've taken every opportunity that we could to get certified. That's I think a huge step in itself, and ultimately will pay back in energy savings. So
What's going to be bronze then?
no, it's certified. So that's the first level of LEED.
That's the first.
That's the first level of LEED.
And platinum is
Platinum's the highest.
Highest.
Yeah.
Okay. So it'll be just certified.
That's right.
Got it. Okay.
Silver, bronze, gold, platinum. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Councilor Kiley.
2 points I'd like to make. One regarding the panels. I think our strategy was clearly identified in the process that was laid out by Attorney Fifley. And I think we just need to allow that process to work itself out. The issue has been identified. I don't think anything is being swept under the rug here. And we're just simply trying to work through our contractual agreements and responsibilities in resolving that issue. And I, for one, when I make decisions, I'd like to have all of the information, not just partial information, because that's the only way you can make a clear, decisive decision that resolves the issue. Regarding the private revenue, $38 million in total private revenue generated thus far. I mean, that's tremendous. You know, I look at that as a discount on our facility. And I'm not an individual that's reluctant when I'm out shopping to ask for discounts. That's about the time that my wife moves off to the side and looks for the nearest rock to crawl under. And I'm generally very pleased with a 10% discount, elated with a 20% discount, but getting nearly a third of this facility paid for through private partnership, that is actually phenomenal, and that is fantastic. And I would applaud everybody involved, our private partners and our staff, for getting that done. I look forward to the facility. Good job.
Thank you, Councilor Kiley. Councilor Jameson.
One last question for Mark, if I could, on the contingency funds. I know we talked about those over the months and years. Maybe you'd made comments in the past about releasing contingencies funds. We upgraded the sound, seats, floor, scoreboard, stuff like that.
Yep.
Can you tell me where that is, and what does it mean when you release contingency funds?
It just means, essentially, the word release means that you've held them to a certain point in time until you're confident that you can move those contingencies into alternates. Probably the most recent ones, we've put additional dollars into the upper concourse with grounds, dyed, polished floors, a number of those kinds of finishes to try to make sure that in many buildings that we toured, if you went to the upper concourse, it almost looked like a different building. Finishes were different, very little in soffits, looked very just a lot of exposed concrete. You walk to our upper concourse, it has the same cloud ceiling treatments, has the same flooring treatments, things of that nature. And so we've progressed through the project and continue to release those funds. One of the key components, that Tracy mentioned is early on, as we toured the various places, they did say, make sure you set aside dollars for day 2 or year 2. And that may be because SMG gets in there and says, this would really work better if we did this. Maybe it's a new concierge desk, maybe it's something different, right? And so we've plugged in $500,000 early on and have continued to carry that through. Now we have additional dollars beyond that that we continue to work through the final stages. We'll get to a point that now you're getting to that point in the building where you're seeing the final finishes. And they're nothing major, but they're small tweaks that you go, okay, I think at this point we'd like to make that change. Well, that may be a $3,000 change, maybe a $5,000 change. And so we make those changes now. And our owner's rep recommended that, a lot of our attention to detail will really happen in the last 9 months because you really start to see all the finishes going through. But we will have that $500,000 set aside for day 2, and then there'll be, I can't give you a number today because we're still working through a number of items, but there will be funds above and beyond that as well that we'll take into day 2.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Mark. We've had quite a bit of rain,
Yes.
and we've been talking about the siding, and it does appear there's some gaps in the siding. Have we had much damage to the building from water damage?
We have not, in that there's the barriers are actually inside the siding for the weather vapor, and so there's not an issue with that.
And then also, when are we having an executive session for the city council?
Well, I'm going to leave that up to our city attorney, Dave Feifley, to advise us if it's necessary to have an executive session. And if I could clarify, too, a comment made from Dave, about things he shared with leadership. He has shared some things with me, but it's been because I've called him up and I've asked him specific questions about what do we do or what does this mean, more from a personal level of interest for myself. And as any of you can do, call our city attorney and ask him. There have been occasions where you've noticed here over the recent weeks, probably a little bit more email from Dave Feifley, and it's because I've asked him to share what he told me with you. And I asked him to do it because, unlike Councilor Erpenbach, who seems to do very well as a journalism major, she can communicate a whole lot better than I can. And Dave, being an English major, he does seem to have a pretty good grasp of that too. So when I ask questions, if I feel that, hey, this is something that the council needs to know, I ask him to share that with you. But he hasn't come to me to volunteer a lot. In fact, 90% of what I heard today was new to me, so like as it probably was to most of you. So just so you're aware of that. But to address the issue of an executive session, if we feel that there's a need, executive sessions we can have because of personnel, contractual, or pending litigation would be the only circumstances, I believe. And until we have one of those, I don't know if it's necessary to call one. I can see where it may happen, but we have no definite plans unless, Councilor Staggers, you have something you would need to discuss.
Well, I guess I'm concerned. We're going to be taking over the building on August the 1st. And once we take over the building, then that's an easy argument for the contractors to say, hey, look, this issue about the siding must not have been that much of a concern to you.
That's not the case. That does not relieve the contractor from any of that. Just like if you
doesn't,
built a house.
But it provides some argument they can use. You're taking over the building now? This must not have been that serious.
October.
Counselor, we've triggered the contract provisions that provide that there's that obligation on behalf of the folks I mentioned for an entire year after substantial completion. So the fact that substantial completion occurs, the building possession is turned over to us, those are continuing obligations because they've been put on notice that this is a non-conforming work. So those obligations are not going away simply because we're meeting the event center opening day deadline.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Wasn't there something in your report, Dave, where you talked about, and maybe it's in the slides too, something about there's going to be models of different
Correct.
kinds of siding that we will see in October?
Correct.
That even though we have possession of the building, and I use that term loosely, that in October we're going to look at new kinds of siding, and that's what you said to us. And then I would just comment too that my understanding is that the siding is just that. It's just an outside thing. It's just pretty. That the building itself doesn't rely on that siding.
Again, the 400 different inspections or 450 that Mike Cooper discussed are certainly making sure that a certificate of occupancy can take place. This is the exterior skin. And again, until we have something very concrete in October, as you mentioned, Councilor Erpenbach, regarding these mock-ups and where we need to go, solutions proposed, that would be the perfect time to maybe discuss with you, attorney-client, in terms of options.
Bring the models in. We'll want to see them, I'm sure.
I think we need to open the roof and have a crane come in, but.
Councilor Staggers.
But I guess, why can't we just have an executive session this week? I think because I have a lot of questions, really.
We've always been open whenever you want, Council.
Can we do it this week?
It's difficult to have an executive session without having it be a contractual or an issue of litigation. So, I mean, for us to just have an executive session to discuss this, I don't think that would be in the public interest, and it would serve no purpose, from what I see.
Okay, we're having a dispute about siding. This could cost lots of money, and I guess that's the reason I'm bringing it up.
At this point,
again, councilors, I mean, we're willing to do an executive session at any point. The South Dakota Open Meetings Commission has said you can have an executive session to consult with your attorney in order to engage in attorney-client communications, and we are willing to do that at any time. But again, we're so far to go, and it's so preliminary until we have some more concrete answers and see if these two possible ways of fixing the problem are worthy, and where we go from there, it would be very premature. And there's no intent to try and hide the ball here, Counselor. It's just a question of you need to have all the information. I mean, I've represented thousands of clients over the years. I got to have all the information too before I can adequately advise you where we need to go from here.
Councilor Kiley.
Just very quickly. Once again, the issue has been identified, and we've started the process in accordance with our contractual agreement. And this, by the way, has taken place prior to our taking possession of the building August 1. The process has started. We need to allow it time to work itself through.
I'm going to move us on. Thank you, everybody, for the update on the event center. There will be more forthcoming, I am certain of that, and everybody will be informed, and the public will be informed also. We have our monthly financial report. Director Turbach.
Good afternoon once again. Are you ready for something a little more mundane for a while?
We get more information about this.
We're halfway through the fiscal year, June 30th. So this report will cover information through the midpoint of the year. The most recent data as of the halfway point for unemployment was the May figure. You can see that in our local MSA, unemployment continued to be quite low, 3.3%, approximately where we were, within 0.1% a year ago, and significantly lower than both the state and the national average. Building permit values continue at a very solid pace, not quite the outstanding activity we saw last year, but still very, very strong, well ahead of 2012. Through June of this year, almost $282 million of construction activity was permitted, and that's, as I said, running behind last year, but still over 35% ahead of 2012 at the midpoint of the year. So again, a very, very busy year in terms of the construction activity taking place in the community. Another economic indicator that we always report on is our sales tax collections. This graphic represents the 12-month growth rate on a rolling basis. The current rate, or over the last 12 months, the sales tax collections have grown at 6.2%. Calendar year 2013 is kind of the peak on this chart. You can see that December of 13 is the high point. For the calendar year of 13, we actually grew at about 8%. And you can see over the past 2 years, that covered by this graphic, over that 24-month period, we've stayed right around that 6% growth. We've been down just above 5% up to that 8% peak, and again, we're currently running at about 6.2%. Last month when I reported to you, that was at 6.8%, so that continues to come down off that year-end high from 6 months ago. We also review the entertainment tax collections as a measure of more of the discretionary spending, or the dollars that are rolling around in the local economy on a more discretionary basis. You can see this entertainment tax collection has been, again, the growth rate has been quite stable at around that 6% level. Currently, over the last 12 months, we're growing at about 5.3%. And again, that's down slightly from 5.6% that I reported to you a month ago. Looking at kind of a snapshot of the general fund revenue and expenses year to date. Through the first half of the year, the general fund has recognized a little over $66 million in revenue. That's up $1.2 million over the same period last year, and we're at about 48% of what we've budgeted for revenues for 2014. Last year, at this point, we were at 50%. So in terms of the percentage of budget, we're slightly behind. I think that's a reflection of how quickly our sales taxes were growing last year. We were a little bit ahead of the game already at this point last year. On the expense side, we've spent $65.6 million through the first half of the year. That's down fairly significantly, about $2.5 million when compared to the first half of last year. That is primarily due to the additional costs we incurred the first half of last year relative to the ice storm. So our expenses were running a little bit high a year ago. It's good to see that come back down. So with that, I will open it up for any questions you have.
Questions from Director Turbach. Councilor Rolfe.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm a little concerned about the year-to-date on sales tax, both entertainment and regular. Anything to attribute to that? With all the construction going on, that was one of the things I would think would be fairly high too.
Well, one of the things I think to keep in mind is that we saw so much growth last year in our retail economy, and that's reflected in our sales tax growth rate. It's really difficult to sustain that over a longer period of time. So it takes more and more activity to sustain that rate of growth at 8%. So it's not entirely surprising to see it come down off that rate. I think long-term 6% is much closer to the longer-term average that we've seen over the last 10 to 20 years here in Sioux Falls. So certainly we don't like to see anything go down, I guess, when it's going good. We like to see it continue to grow and grow very robustly, but nothing wrong with the 6% growth rate. I mean, that's very, very positive. And at this point, I think it would be very premature to say we're really concerned about it. But it's certainly something we're keeping an eye on and we'll continue to monitor going forward.
Yep, except for unreportable, according to your chart here, we're at 3.8%. Am I correct?
Relative, right, for the first 6 months of the year, when we measure against the first 6 months of last year, that's correct. We're up about 3.8%, including those audit collections. That's right.
And the same thing with the entertainment tax that way. And I guess that's the one that frightens me a little bit, that we're down that low on that one, because 6% growth rate is fantastic if we can keep that going. But because I know we figured on, what was it 4% this year?
The budget for 2014 was based on 5%. Again, because we saw such strong growth in 2013, that 8% or 7.7% growth in 2013 actually started us for this year at a higher level. So it's not going to take us 5% growth in 14 to hit our budget, because we're starting from a much
Higher
larger starting point.
Okay.
So 3.8% I don't think is anything to be overly concerned about at this point. Obviously, we'd like to see that rate pick up the second half of the year, but it's, I think it's well within tolerable levels given the point of the year that we're at.
We need to keep track of it, though. You're right. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jameson.
Tracy, I know you do these reports time after time, and I'm just wondering if you have time or if it's available to you, the unemployment rate. And you always mention the state and the national levels. How hard would it be just to include that in the graph? Because I think this really is a good story. Our unemployment rate is so low, but you state that it's well below, but if we could just see them, if it's easy enough, if you're already getting the numbers from the same place, if you can just...
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat of a trade-off and getting the graphic too cluttered. If we're going to show 3 years worth of city data and we're going to throw 3 years of state and federal data on there, it might get awfully busy. We do include the actual numbers in your hard copy report, so you can see the actual percentages for the state and federal unemployment rates for the current monthly number, and then the past 2 years as well. So inside that very first page, the top left corner, you can see the state of South Dakota national unemployment rates compared to the local MSA. So even though it's not on the graphic in the presentation, it is included in the table below the graphic.
Never mind.
Councilor Staggers.
Just wondering.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
The $5,000 for the consultant, is that what you
The
asked about?
5,000.
I
and
asked
also,
that question, I understand that came out of the event center budget for the
yeah,
consultant.
but if we paid it, I mean,
Have we paid it? I don't know, but I know that's where it will come from, is from the event center
Right,
budget.
yeah.
Yes.
and also, is there any anticipation we're going to be paying more to the Judd Allen Group? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that either.
Okay.
I have a question, if I could, Tracy, and kind of looks at the unemployment chart and maybe even the sales tax collections. We look at percentages all the time, but what does it tell us about job growth in Sioux Falls? Have we added? We're looking at 3.3% unemployment, but 3.3% of 100,000 this year and this year and 95,000 last year. What are we seeing for job growth? Is there a place where we can find those types of numbers?
Absolutely, yeah. This information comes off it actually comes from the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, but the state of South Dakota maintains information on the Department of Labor webpage on unemployment statistics, and you can find for, I think, any year and any given month going back for years, the number of people in the job pool and the number of people employed and the number of people unemployed and unemployment rates, all off that South Dakota Department of Labor webpage.
And this is,
and occasionally I pull that information and report that to you. I just in my speaking points, I've included that in the past, and I didn't happen to do that this month.
Okay. Yeah, that and even like our balance of our reserve funds and that type of thing. We know they're at 30% or 28%, but you know, this year versus last year, that dollar number can be significantly different, even though the percentage is the same.
Right.
So
Yep.
sometimes seeing hard numbers with those, you know, would be
Percentages
beneficial.
can be a little bit tricky sometimes, yeah.
Yep, yep. Other questions? All righty. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Turbach. Any other business for the council? Council? Meeting adjourned, 7 o'clock council meeting.